Alrighty, well, let's start with a mantra, um, and we'll kind of plant the seed and allow the work to unfold. And so just find some time to center yourself wherever you are. Take a couple deep breaths. Sahana vavatu, sahana bunaktu, saha viryam karavavahai, tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Great. So the teacher-student prayer, quite commonly done prior to any kind of study. And it translates, should be in your chat column. May we be protected together. May we be nourished together. May we create strength among one another. May our study be filled with light, which is tejas. May we not oppose each other or cause hostility for each other. And then let there be peace, peace, peace. Very important in this time of reality, of creating this vibration within our practice and within ourself and within our ethics and morality of our day-to-day life. And hopefully one thing I'm really trying to share in these moments together are that Ayurveda is a way of life. Ayurveda is an art of expressing your reality. Ayurveda is the science of living. Ayurveda is so much more than just medicine. So of course, in order to embrace who you really are, you need to be healthy. And Ayurveda suggests health as a path to enlightenment. So these lessons, and this being the last one that we get to share together, these lessons should help you find a deeper realization of your path, and be a suggestive push or more encouragement in embracing your roles and your routines and your purposes and your obligations in your life right now. So when we take this mantra, we take this shloka, however you want to call it, we really say, can we protect each other? You know, our study should protect us. Can we nourish each other? Well, our study should nourish us. Can we create strength for one another? Our study should strengthen who we are. And let that study be filled with light, tejas. So tejas, is something that dissolves the mental barrier, the knots that we have within our being that restrict us from truly being our highest potential. So this opening mantra has a lot of potency in it, if we really observe that. And of course, these are things that we've heard before. Be good to each other, study, be strong, shed light on a certain topic, be focused, have peace. But when we say it over and over again, it really reinforces that vibration so it can arise in our life. And it's very important when we're studying something like Dhatus, which is the topic today, which can be somewhat bland and boring, or it can be somewhat enriching and enlightening and important, because Ayurveda presents a way of looking at the body. And that's what the Dhatus are, is a way of looking at the body. And looking at the anatomy in terms of Ayurveda, so you can get the most out of the body, and you can go directly to an aspect of one's being, so you can directly influence that. So allow the study of the Dhatus to be a way that you can look at your own organism, and then it's a way of looking at the organism of your clients. So use this, adapt it into your own modality for healing. Adapt it into whatever it is that you're interacting with for another individual, be it acupuncture, massage therapy, counseling, diet and lifestyle, nutrition type of thing, meditation or pranayama class. I always try to look at a client with how is the state of their digestion, how much toxicity is in the body, and where is that toxicity arising, and then how are the dhatus functioning, or where does the problem exist within the dhatus. So we're going to break down each dhatu, and at the very top of this chat, I believe, or right after the student-teacher prayer, I put down a link, ayurvedacollege.com, and there's a great article on all 7 dhatus. 8 if you include, well, we all have 7 dhatus. Why I say 8 is the last dhatu that we'll talk about is shukra, which is male reproductive tissue, and then artava, which is female reproductive tissue. So it's a great essay, and I know we're working on chapter 11 with Dr. Lad, but more the better with this. So the more you study these different things, the better, the stronger they'll be embedded into your thinking process. And as Dr. Lad would say, you want certain things to be on the tip of the tongue. So this is where intuition arises, is because you know it so well, you don't even have to think about it in order to get to the answer. So we'll start with what is a dhatu? What does dhatu mean? And the word itself means to hold together, to bind, not to bind, but to support. So this is why it gets translated as a tissue. Some Sanskritist, and I'm not a Sanskritist, I wish my Sanskrit was better, will debate the whole idea of dhatu being called the tissue. But there are certain elemental components of the body that hold a function together. So keep that in mind. When we look at all these different aspects of the body, the dhatu is holding a thing together, holding an action together. And I like to call dhatu tissue because that's what the tissue does. Cells come together to form a tissue. Tissues come together to form an organ. Organs come together to form a system. And a bunch of systems come together to form a body. So when we think of the tissue being the system forming substance or element, then we can easily say that dhatu is a tissue. So long story short, dhatu means the thing that holds a thing together, to hold and to support. Dhatu also means tissue, and I like using tissue. In order for there to be genuine health, in order for there to be a true state of balance according to Ayurveda, we need to have well-formed tissue. So the dhatus need to be properly formed. The dhatus need to be strongly upheld. The tissues need to be free of toxicity, cleansed, and replenished. So we said in a lecture prior that we're constantly regenerating the body. So how many hearts have we had? How many livers have we had? How many lungs have we had? These cells are constantly regenerating themselves and forming new things. So the idea with this regeneration, we're constantly creating new dhatus. We're constantly creating new tissue through the food that we eat, the experiences that we're having, the air that we're breathing, the water that we're drinking, or the other things that we're drinking, the alcohol, the soda, Powerade, whatever it is that's going in. So we are taking these things that are entering the body through the mind, through the mouth, through the lungs, and they are coming in to create these new tissues. So remember, we said what is the purpose and responsibility of each thing that we've talked about? What is the purpose and responsibility of Vata? What is the purpose and responsibility of Pitta? Same thing for Kapha. So now we're going to go through what is the purpose and responsibility of each Dhatu. The Dhatus have to be upheld and cleansed on a regular basis. So you have to know exactly what's going on with each Dhatu on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment basis. So know that there are 7 Dhatus. We've stated that before. And we'll start with the first, which is, excuse me, I need to write this to everyone. Which is Rasa Dhatu. Now it's good to kind of see what the word rasa implies. So let's translate that word first. Rasa means juice, it means sap, it means melody. Rasa also means taste. So those 4 translating words get you very close in the ballpark of rasa. Juice, sap, melody, and taste. Now let's take that word taste for a while. When you say somebody has a good taste in music, or they have good taste in fashion, good taste in cultural activities, good taste in whatever it is, there's a certain intelligence that the individual has, a certain refinement that that person upholds. When we say juice or sap, this relates to the person's juiciness, the person's state of hydration, the person's satiation, we can say. And what I like to use for analogy with this is if you're going hiking in the woods, let's say, well, we were talking about Pennsylvania earlier, somewhere in Pennsylvania, let's say in the Poconos, and it's summertime or it's late spring, still kind of cool or getting warm though, and you can go into the woods and there are going to be certain limbs of these trees that will snap easily. They're dead, they're dry, they're brittle, they're frail, it's done. There's no life in it. You snap it and it's easy, and then you keep going on the path. Now there'll be certain limbs that you'll come up to and you'll try to break it, and it won't break so easy because there's juice in that limb. So the same thing is true with the rasa, is if we are juicy, if we have a good state of hydration, I'll go into how to improve that state here in a bit. But if we are juicy, or if we are filled with juice, then we are like that tree, or we are like that plant that is difficult to break. Now you'll see rasa will deplete itself over time. So you see that in later stages of life, the individual does become more frail. They are more brittle. They are more dry. They are easier to break in a way. You see more hip fractures, more broken bones, just on things like falling off the chair. And the state of nourishment and hydration starts to change. So rasa is basically lymph and plasma in the system. It is all water in the individual. And this first dhatu is what you have the most of. So we've heard many times doctors or books or things that the body is predominantly water. And so another way of saying that is the body is predominantly rasa dhatu. So we are predominantly this juice-carrying tissue. We are predominantly rasa dhatu. And that water hydrates all the other dhatus. So rasa is intended, what is the purpose of rasa? Rasa intends to hydrate all the other tissues, nourish all the other tissues, bring life to all the other tissues, and create enthusiasm. That's a very important one. When you are well nourished, when you are satisfied, you feel enthusiastic. So go to the moments of your life when you felt very enthusiastic. Maybe you felt enthusiastic prior to this lesson. I can't wait to study this. Maybe you ate a meal, or you're getting ready to eat a meal at your favorite restaurant. You feel very enthusiastic. Or you drink something that makes you very happy and you feel very enthusiastic. Or think of a moment when you're parched. You haven't drank water in a very long time, and you have that first sip of water after you've been dehydrated, and you have that feeling of euphoria. So this kind of juicy thing is all a part of rasa. Now, let's go into the mental aspect of rasa. And we said that rasa is also melody. Now, when you sing from the heart, maybe in your shower, or maybe you play guitar and you sing alone in your bedroom, or maybe you're a performer, or you like to chant in your yoga classes, or in your own meditations, there is a certain communication that happens, a certain upliftment, a certain euphoria that comes. And rasa is that kind of intoxicating fragrance that comes from that experience. So rasa aligns with that melody because rasa gives that kind of love when you sing, or when you have that juicy expression. So rasa aligns with these things. Now, a good thing to look at, and I don't know the study very closely, but a guy named Dr. Emoto, I believe is his name, and I've only used him loosely in references, so I should probably look at his thing a little bit more. But this Dr. Emoto from Japan, I believe, homeopathic doctor, did an experiment on water. And so some of you might know this, but he would say positive things to the water in Japanese, like "I love you," or "You're the best," or "Thank you very much," and the water would align in a particular way. And then he would say things negative, like "I hate you," or "You're ridiculous," or whatever, "I'm going to kill you," and then that would have a kind of a more of an asymmetrical vibe to the water. So his point was, if the body is predominantly water, these sound vibrations have an enormous influence on the state. And this draws a perfect correlation between rasa implying melody and rasa being the state of water in the body. So a lot of times when I'm sitting with someone and rasa dhatu is the predominant dosha the predominant dhatu that we're working on, I will many times kind of suggest to sing more, to chant more, to express yourself vocally more. And out of all the places to express yourself vocally, the best is the shower. So singing in the shower as this water bathes the system, as you're being covered and doused in water, singing and expressing yourself melodically has an enormous impression on the rasa dhatu. So sing jolly and be jolly. So let's go into some signs and symptoms that rasa is depleted, that the rasa is not good. Rasa will present itself as dehydration. It will present itself as either lack of nutrition. The person is malabsorbed, if that's such a phrase, or they'll have it overly absorbed. So kind of like a lymphatic edema type of thing, where they retain too much water. Or you'll see this definitely with diabetes. There's too much sugar in the water carrying channel. So we have malabsorption, or have over satiated water in the body, edema. We have a lack of enthusiasm with the individual. So rasa is providing enthusiasm, but if there's no enthusiasm for life, then that means there's a lack of enthusiasm, very simply stated. But predominantly, I like to look for what's going on in the state of the hydration of the individual. Are they drinking enough water? Are they utilizing the water that they're drinking? Are they utilizing the juice of their diet? By meaning juice, I mean what they're extracting out of the food. So we eat food to extract the juice of it, the essence of it. We eat kale to get the iron. We eat rice to get the carbohydrates. We eat nuts and seeds to get the protein. So the Agni, your digestive strength, which we talked in great extent about, pulls those nutrients out and it brings it into this water carrying channel. And that circulation of juice is the Rasa Dhatu. So you really want to be aware of how is the body being nutrified. I hope that makes sense. This is a little challenging. So signs, let's go deeper into the signs that Rasa is not functioning well. When it's not nutrifying and you have that state of dehydration, you'll see more things on the top layer of the skin. So dry skin, ashy skin, cracked skin, and especially in the lips. So be very mindful of the lips of your client. Dry, cracked, are there teeth marks? Are they crispy? Are they bright and full? Even somebody with thin lips might have a little bit of gloss to it. And of course, you can tell your awareness should be sharp and know that that's lip gloss. That's not healthy Rasa Dhatu gloss. So be very mindful of this. Top layer of the skin, how does it feel juicy? Does it look juicy? Lips, are they juicy or are they dehydrated? Any questions on this Rasa Dhatu? Very good. I know not everybody's here, so it's fine. You can always write me an email if you have questions, need clarification on some of these things. The next, because time is important, is Rakta Dhatu. And Rakta means red. So Rakta is, in essence, the red blood cell. So when you think of what's going on in the veins and the arteries, which is where Rasa really exists well, Rasa is the juice in which everything moves in. And the red blood cell will hold nutrients on the cell, let's say oxygen, and then it delivers that oxygen. So the Rakta Dhatu is responsible for oxygenation because the red blood cell is transporting the nutrient to the particular tissue. And the most important element that it transports is oxygen. So Rakta is responsible for oxygenation. And from here, we say Rasa is also responsible for vigor, vitality. A little bit different than Rasa. Rasa is more emotional. Rakta is more empowerment. Rasa is more feminine. Rakta is more masculine. So here, Rakta Dhatu gives oxygenation, it gives empowerment. Another important thing is it gives color complexion. Now, if you've seen someone donate a lot of blood, and they stand up too fast and they start to pass out and their face goes white, this is an aspect of the Rakta Dhatu being depleted. Or someone's like, oh, it looks like you've seen a ghost, or an anemic person. Anemia is an aspect of Rakta. I'm going to go into that a little bit later, so don't jump the gun with me yet, even though I am. But that color complexion is an aspect of Rakta Dhatu. So Rakta gives a healthy color complexion. So the Rasa gives you the juicy look. The Rakta gives you your color look. Okay, so it's pretty relatively simple. So the Rakta Dhatu, when it is impaired, will be all matters of oxygenation. So when any tissue is not being properly oxygenated, you'll have an issue with Rakta Dhatu. When any aspect of your body is not being empowered, that makes sense. If it's not being supported energetically, then you have an aspect of Rakta Dhatu. And of course, anything manipulating the red blood cell, we might see this with anemia, sickle cell anemia. Sickle cell anemia is when the red blood cell doesn't form right, and it will be more like a sickle, like one of those things that when you're cutting weeds in the yard with a big sickle, and that the red blood cell will have that kind of crescent moon type shape, and it loses its power and vitality with that. And it's a little bit more rare in Caucasians and very prevalent in African American communities. I don't understand why that is, but it is so. So anything manipulating the quality of the red blood cell, think Rakta Dhatu. So what the individual will express themselves as is poor color complexion. You see this with a client that might be excessively heavily bleeding during their menstrual period. You see this with a person that is under a lot of stress, high blood pressure. You notice that they become almost purple. So here, you want to look with the Rakta Dhatu, you want to observe what's going on in the deeper aspects of the skin. So rasa is very top level skin type stuff. Clarity of the skin in the face, clarity on the skin in the arms and the hands, any part of the skin that's exposed. And then Rakta is just deeper. So what you see with Rakta issues is, again, simple color complexion, but you'll see things deeper like the Pitta issues with acne, more pus and abscess type problems. You can get this with the ingrown hair. So notice that ingrown hair can just be top level, and that's like a rasa problem. And then the ingrown hair can go deeper and deeper until the whole area becomes quite inflamed, and there's an abscess and there's a whole bunch of stuff. I've even known people to go to the emergency room to have that drained off an ingrown hair. So let's go on to the next. Any questions on Rakta Dhatu? Clear as mud? Good. So the next is going to be, might help if I spell it right, Mamsa Dhatu. And I'm going to go back at the end of this and go through very simple things to improve the Dhatu. So Mamsa Dhatu is the muscle tissue of the body. And it's pretty straightforward Dhatu. And I didn't study anatomy as much as I should. And there's plenty of time, so I'm sure that study will visit me soon or not so soon. But definitely as a massage therapist or one that's working with hands-on body work, you'll understand Mamsa Dhatu on a different level. So a lot of people are coming to you with Mamsa Dhatu issues. So this is a great integrative moment where you can take what you already know as a massage therapist and just blend it into the Ayurveda terminology and the Ayurvedic understanding of what Mamsa Dhatu is. So take all your muscle trigger point stuff and just apply it to, say, now just call it Mamsa Dhatu. So the entire muscular system is Mamsa. And the purpose of Mamsa in Ayurveda is to plaster the body. So we have a skeleton, we have a structure. And the idea is the muscle plasters itself to form the individual. The Mamsa Dhatu also provides power. So it's that rajasic kind of force of the muscle gives you the strength to stand up, walk, run, jog, pick things up, throw things, hit things, whatever it is that the power is intending itself to do. So providing power, plastering the individual, it's relatively straightforward and simple. So again, we have a interesting masculine-feminine combo. So for this dhatu and the next dhatu, we're going to have the same type of thing. Mamsa is more masculine. It provides a very heating type of thing. Or, yeah, muscles require heat. When you work your muscles a lot, then you develop more heat. So signs that the muscles are, or the Mamsa Dhatu is having an issue is more so lack of exercise. So the muscle becomes underutilized, and therefore you don't get to use the potential, the full potential of the muscle. With this, you'll have muscle atrophy, any calcium deposit, stress knot, issues that you'll work with in your own practice of, and again, massage therapy, of knowing where someone's issues are developing and knotting in the individual. And I don't know if you've studied much of this, but what happens when the stress is affecting more in the upper part of the neck or in the shoulders or in the chest, when the stress is in the lower back or in the hips or in the legs. And you might want to do your own study. And again, I'm not the sharpest on Mamsa Dhatu, but what kind of stress causes things in the shoulders? So sometimes they will say that, they have too much burden in their life, too many heavy responsibilities that are weighing on the person's shoulder. They're caring for an ailing parent. Their kids are, in soccer and going to school. They're in private school, but they're going through divorce and they don't know what's going on in their life. And then they have to make it to their yoga class at night, So this kind of person will have the weight of the world on their shoulders. So again, you might want to look on this. Things going on in the muscles around the legs, near the knees. Once was said that the knee is the first thing to go forward in your body. So issues with the knees tend to be issues of moving forward in life. You can develop your own style. But there's a lot of ways of looking at what's influencing the individual physically. So Mamsa Dhatu, you want to be aware of just the health of the tissue, of the muscle tissue. And since I'm getting the vibe that a lot of people are hands-on practitioners, then you'll have more of a direct work with this Mamsa Dhatu approach. Now the next is Meta Dhatu. Meta Dhatu means fat tissue. Adipose tissue. And this is the feminine aspect of these two. So the purpose of Meta is to insulate, to soften. And this insulation basically feels like when you're under your duvet in the middle of winter. You never want to leave your bed. It feels so good just to be laying under that nice weighted blanket in your bed, and it's freezing outside. You don't want to leave the bed. So you sleep in, and it feels amazing. So Meta Dhatu does that for the body. Sometimes we really like Meta so much that we accumulate more and more and more of it until we become very large because it feels good, and then it doesn't feel so good. So Meta is basically a protective tissue, and we need Meta to help soften the blow of stress. That's very important to know. Meta softens the blow of stress. So this is highly connected with all sex hormones in the body. I'm not saying sex hormones in the sense of you become aroused and want to mate with your partner, but sex hormones in the sense of how does the body push hormones into the body that help battle the confrontation of the stress hormones. How do you resolve the issues with cortisol and adrenaline, basically? So Meta relaxes the individual. Meta helps the person rest. So I look to the things like melatonin. I look to the things like estrogen, progesterone. I look to things like oxytocin. That's going to go in another category, but we can like oxytocin and dopamine. And these kind of softening, gooey type of things. When we're in love, we feel gooey. When we're ready to lay down at night, we should feel gooey. When we get great sleep, we feel gooey. When we feel softened, we feel gooey. So this kind of softening is very kapha type of thing. We feel soft and we feel safe. When you feel safe, you don't have your defense up. You know, am I going to fight something? And interesting enough, when Meta is not well developed, it will accumulate. And the person is always stressed. So think of stress-related issues here. I had a client here in New York some years back. Why am I gaining weight? You know, what's going on with I had exercise, I eat well, and I just wanted a quick fix. And it's pretty simple. When you think of weight, diet and exercise is the number one thing you should, do. But this person's gaining weight and they are eating well and exercising regularly. And then we started talking more, and she made a few remarks about her husband and that he's much older. And this person's in her 50s, and her husband is in his 70s. And the issue of sex came up, and how little sex she has now, and she feels unloved. She doesn't, she feels older. She said, even the construction workers don't look at me like they used to. And it was a little sappy, a sad moment for the individual. And it came to be these strange stresses started to come up, and realized that her life was very stressful. She was worried about her intimate partner, her husband, love of her life, not feeling intimately attracted to her, not feeling attractive to individuals in her day-to-day life that, used to look at her in a certain way. She doesn't, the stresses of money, the stresses of day-to-day life. And this stress is mounting and mounting. And ultimately it's the fear, the stress of knowing that life is going to come to an end. Oh my gosh, it's scary. And then it tightens up. And then the stress is going and going and going. And think about being stressed like that for years on end, multiple. And then, so how the body responds to that is for Meta to come in and say, you need to relax. You need to calm down. You need to soften. You need to be gooey. And many times we don't listen to the natural intelligence of the body. No, it's sinful to relax and not work. It's sinful to eat sugar. It's sinful to take a nap. It's sinful to not do anything. And so they ignore these things, and the Meta will accumulate to help ground the person for stress. That's one aspect of Meta. So that's not true for everyone. The opposite is true, and this is a little bit more of the common thing you'll see is stress, so I accumulate, so I eat. I'm stressed out, so I consume the unhealthy thing. I feel unloved and unnourished, so I will eat more sweet. There is no intimate partner, so I eat more ice cream. Don't be worried if you eat a lot of ice cream. I'm not judging anybody that eats ice cream. I'm just drawing a correlation. So I had ice cream already this morning. I don't know why. Ice cream was there. I was offered ice cream. I ate it. It was delicious. Ben and Jerry's. Yummy. But the idea is when a certain kind of stress comes in, notice that this is getting very psychological with this dhatu. And it's one dhatu that us in the West are most sensitive of. I've met a lot of people that are not overweight that say that weight is their biggest issue. And you might find this in your own practice. So the obvious thing is lack of exercise and increasing saturated fats and increasing sugar. Coca-Cola, candy, cookie, chocolate, cake, all those type of things will increase rasa dhatu. Excuse me, meta dhatu. Any questions on that? Does that make sense? Great. So the next is asti dhatu. And asti dhatu is the skeleton system. And what this asti dhatu is responsible for, some will say protection. And this one I kind of like, protection. But basically it's the skull protects the brain, the rib cage protects the lungs, the pelvis will uphold the reproductive tissue. So it gives kind of structure and it gives protection. So think it's cage, just think of a cage. And again, this is another tissue that you can, really study deeply with, how many bones that you learn, all the different bones that make the body up, all the bones of the hands and fingers, and you can really get a little bit more specific into bone health. And again, this will relate into meta dhatu, mamsa dhatu, as what stress will do chronically to the individual, because you'll start to see later in life osteoporosis, arthritis, any issue with the bone. So asti dhatu being the bone, being responsible for upholdment, protection, encasement, structure, really has a basic function, basic presentation, and the issues with asti dhatu are quite obvious, with broken bone, brittle bone, arthritis, these kind of things. When there are some more severe type of things, and again, I'm not the strongest with Western medicine or Western diagnosis, but you'll see things when an infection goes into the bone, and that will be quite severe. And you can see this with diabetic patients that ignore an open wound, let's say in their foot. And that wound opens up in their foot and the infection goes deeper and deeper. And then once that infection goes into the bone, then it can kind of travel throughout the entire body. I forget the diagnosis of this, so if anybody knows it, you can type it in. But these kind of things are scary. A lot of times those wounds are ignored, and this is why a foot would get amputated, in a diabetic patient, because you don't want that infection to go into the bone and that bone to cause a bunch of issues. So you'll see that with asti dhatu. But with asti dhatu, more of what you'll see and more of what you want to kind of look at is how is joint and bone health, how severe is one's arthritis. Are you working with someone after a hip surgery or after a broken bone, broken wrist, any kind of fracture? And it's kind of funny. Sometimes I will see more of this stuff, like maybe out west when I do work in New Mexico and Colorado, where there's a lot more skiing, and people will do kind of more of these, bicycle falls, skiing accidents, these kind of things. And we'll go into some other bone health treatments that you can kind of work with. And I kind of do a little bit of a review here. So any questions on Asti Dhatu? It's one of the most exciting subjects of all of Ayurveda. Can you remember those moments in anatomy class when you were in college where for some reason they always scheduled it 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Anatomy 101 with Dr. Brown. The class will be in the portable, way out in the middle. So you're sitting there like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get through this? I just had, pasta. And I forgot to drink coffee. And then you're just like holding on and you're hearing these words. So anyway, not trying to create a bland picture. But what I'm trying to create is an idea of Majja Dhatu. Majja Dhatu is defined in Ayurveda as bone marrow. And its responsibility is to fill space. I thought that was strange. Dr. Lad teaches it as all of the nervous system. Nervous system is a huge system of study, and I highly suggest studying it on your own as much as possible. Because the nervous system houses the prana and will exchange certain aspects of the prana. It'll have aspects of how the mind functions and works. It starts to incorporate things of endocrinology, how the endocrine system is working. It will tie into aspects of the chakra system. So there's a lot of different things that are influencing Majja Dhatu. So study, out of all these, the most important dhatus to study, definitely Rasa Dhatu, definitely Majja Dhatu, and then the next will be the reproductive system. Those three are the most important, the ones that you'll see the most issues arise in your practice. And it's good to know where they're existing and how to talk about it and how to educate the client in particular ways that will aid them to betterment of their health. So Majja Dhatu, when it says fill space, it's basically just the bone marrow filling the open spaces in the bone. But let's just kind of check in with what is the nervous system doing. Now think of this. We have central nervous system, we have peripheral nervous system. Central. Excuse me. My nervous system totally, hold on 1 second. I'll be right back. What a brilliant now example of what happens with the nervous system. You'd be completely into something and then you hear a sound like that and then you have this tension. So I'm glad I could be the test subject of what happens to Majja Dhatu. Brilliant example. Majja Dhatu receives sensory input. It integrates that sensory input into the body and then it delivers a response. Now that response can be a number of things. It can be hearing an abrupt sound and then freaking out and wondering what the hell's going on. Or it could be as simple as, what is your name? Sensory input, you integrate that information, you provide a response. So Majja Dhatu is chief dhatu for basically communication. The chief dhatu for connecting you to experience. It's a big one. Your nervous system is basically the plug into the matrix. Does that make sense? Majja Dhatu says, here is sensory information. So it provides touch, it provides sight, it provides taste, it provides smell. It provides hearing. All these things are touching the nervous system. They come into the central nervous system, and then information is expressed outward. Now, have you heard a phrase in yoga called pratyahara? It's an important word. Have you heard the word Ashtanga yoga? So Ashtanga means 8 limbs. And the 8 limbs are yama and niyama. Those are important, but we're not going to talk about them. Asana, which is the most popular, that's the yoga poses. The next is pranayama, which is breathing exercises. The 5th is pratyahara. And it's typically said removing your sense organs from what they're attached to. And I think that's a negative translation. So basically refining the relationship to each sense organ. So I suggest studying a little bit on pratyahara after our class. And what this implies is many times our energy is in the peripheral nervous system, the stress response. And a lot of times that makes our central nervous system depleted. So how that is when you feel aligned, when you feel tuned in, when you feel relaxed, you feel calm, you feel centered. Why do we say that? Why do we say, I feel centered? I feel aligned. I feel balanced. Why do we say those things? How did that word centered become a description for how we feel? And what are you centered to? So it refers to this kind of alignment to the central nervous system. When we are out and kind of more focusing on the exterior, we're kind of starting to inhabit more of our primal nature of, I need to be on the lookout for a predator. I need to be on the lookout for food. I need to be on the lookout for X, Y, Z, whatever. And that stress starts to be more outwardly focused. So Majja can work in that way. Since Majja Dhatu is the nervous system, it can be in that kind of outwardly focused type of thing, or it can be like this word pratyahara, study it. It can be inwardly focused. And that's where you get that centered feeling. And we want to be centered more than we are not centered. We want to be harnessed on this kind of interior level rather than this exterior level. Make sense? So here, Majja Dhatu has all the neurotransmitters. I know I talked about that briefly with Meta Dhatu. We have serotonin, we have melatonin, acetylcholine, choline. So these neurotransmitters say, hey, you're happy. Hey, you're content. Hey, you should be sleepy. You should rest. Hey, you should move your arm. If I was in your room with you and I threw a ball and you caught that ball with your hand, think about all the calculus that you would have to, register. Okay, the arc, the velocity, the speed. I was horrible at math. I barely got through algebra. There's no way I could, get that in the time to know exactly where my hand needed to be in space. But your body computes all that information in the moment of perception, the speed of perception to catch that ball. So all these things are under the responsibility of Majja to be able to receive information, react to information, very similar to catching a ball that's thrown to you in the room. So think about a very simple thing is when you go for a walk today, you really focus on the entire process, the feet hitting the ground, the air touching the skin, the things that you're seeing, the things that you're smelling, the things that you're tasting, the entire experience, the entire movement, and really align with that. If you go to yoga tonight, really get connected with the entire movement, the dance of it. The hands coming up, the bow forward. Inhale and looking up, exhale, low push-up. Inhale, upward facing dog, exhale, downward facing dog. Jump forward, inhale, the hands reach all the way up, and then come back down, samastitihi. It's all an expression of movement. One thing that I found very interesting in the beginning was, how are we calling this a spiritual practice? We're not really talking about anything deep. You know, they call in yoga the spiritual thing, and I was so enamored with yoga being spiritual, and then I go to Power Yoga 101 place, and I was like, oh, this teacher is going to be fully enlightened. It's very naive, and it was just an exercise. But then why does it feel good? Why do I feel good when I'm done? And it's because basically our Majja Dhatu is given an order prescribed way of moving, and it starts to feel centered. So any questions on Majja Dhatu? Lovely. The next. Shukra. Shukra is the male reproductive fluid. So it is synonymous with semen. And it is the entire reproductive system as a whole. It's also the name for Venus. I always thought that was interesting, that reproductive fluid is also the name of a planet. Now, I'm being very careful of saying these things because I received that letter in the mail saying Kyle was inappropriate in his class in Oregon, and he was aggressive. I've never been told that. I almost took that as a compliment, that I was called aggressive. But I was saying that I talked too much about sex. And I think that was a little harsh. But sex is, if there was no sex, we wouldn't be here. We are here because of sex. And when you have a tissue in your body called shukra, and that word shukra means semen, and semen is also the name for Venus, then we have to talk about these things. And we can't be like 80% of the people in the town that I'm from that don't even tell that their daughter that something called a period will happen to you in 8th grade. And the next thing you know, they go to the bathroom and they start freaking out. So suppression, not so good. Exploitation, equally not so good. Balance is the key, all right? So Shukra is the male reproductive system. And obviously it's for procreation. Now, let's not get too stagnant with this where we think sex is just for procreational purposes. Sex is for a lot more than just that. So the reproductive system can function in a few different ways. It can be excessive, where the person is always thinking about sex. It's nonstop, 24/7, and they're ruled by that sex energy. Their libido is, in a way, too high. It's great to have a healthy libido, but sex should not be the number one thought all day long. And that makes the person kind of heated. It makes the person just kind of like, I can't think straight. I'm just thinking about sex nonstop. And then the opposite is true, is too much, a low libido. Now, a phrase is not commonly said. We have straight, we have gay, we have transgender, we have bisexual. The asexual, we don't talk too much about. It's completely fine to be celibate. The people that are celibate, we call it brahmacharian, never think about sex. So I have to be celibate to be this holy man, the spiritual man. That's their path. They take that energy that could be used to create a family, and it becomes stabilized within the self, and it goes up rather than out. That's another topic, and I don't want to go too deep into that. But basically, harnessing and understanding the libido, very important for understanding this Shukra Dhatu. So Shukra can, since it generates sperm and it gives sperm for procreational purposes or pleasure purposes, can be done too much. So what you do see with an individual that is having, we talked about this in the last conversation, more than 7 orgasms a week, will start to be a little depleted in the ojas category. And the things that you'll see here, let's just tie in second chakra type of stuff. Does that make sense? Second chakra, going into a land that nobody knows anything about. Okay, I'm assuming it seems, but second chakra, reproductive tissue, it is really more on understanding your sexuality, understanding yourself, your self-esteem, your self-image, your self-understanding. Put self and then anything after that. Kind of your ego in a way. And these things are very important. Working with a client now where I think we said last time, very insecure about being publicly gay. Man's 45 years old. So it took him to be till he was in his 40s to be a little bit more open about being who he is. So these things are aspects of health, aspects of the individual where the ego gets kind of confused. The ego gets kind of spun around. Is this just a strange thing, or my father said, this to me, and society says this to me. Is that right? But I feel that way. And so this confusion starts to come up with Shukra Dhatu. With that idea of too many orgasms a week will kind of actually, this is strange, promote more of that confusion. It becomes a nervous habit rather than a pleasure promoting type of thing. So nervousness, anxiety, confusion, skewed, suppressed emotions or exploited emotions with sexuality, these will be all aspects of the Ojas, the Shukra. Questions on that?
7 for women as well?
The next will be Artava. So instead of Shukra for as it is for a man, it'll be Artava for a female. So her 7th tissue will be Artava, not Shukra.
I mean 7 orgasms.
Oh.
It's different for women, right?
It's different for women because there is typically not anything leaving the body. Whereas a woman will lose her ojas more so in menstruation. So it's not a complete identical thing, but that feeling of your period where you're like, okay, I'm tired, I'm a little spent, and this is the feeling of, menstruation. That's the feeling of low ojas. So that feeling is similar for a man that has had too many orgasms in a week. So a woman will actually, I think we said this last time, will actually gain ojas because she's receiving during the sexual experience. So in that sense, I don't want to say more is better because everything is balance. A woman will receive ojas in the sex act. So just keep that in mind. And there's a lot of stuff written, Mantak Chia, or Chai, however you want to call it, transformation of sexual energy. He talks a lot about this. This is very written a lot about in Taoism. I'll write his name down, I think. He's a little out there. He's a little unusual, kind of new agey kind of guy, but he has some cool stuff that he's written. I think he started writing books on sexuality back from the 70s or 80s or something like that, and he has some cool stuff. I asked Dr. Robert Svoboda, which is one of the most prominent Ayurvedic teachers, and about this very subject actually. And he didn't want to answer my question. He goes, "Go read Mantak Chia." I was like, what a clever man. I just saw him speak last week here in Brooklyn. Yeah, he's a pretty brilliant man.
You saw Robert Svoboda?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love him. Oh my God.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, he came and did a lecture here last week. He did 3 lectures. I only saw him for 1, but yeah, brilliant man. But I asked him about this. And that was his response. Read Mantak. So,
that's cool.
A lot of good juice there for that. But definitely very, very easy to observe this chakra. you know, very important for a man to, especially it's difficult as a woman talking to a man about some of these things. So just know your boundaries, know what is a good exchange, know your client, because it's delicate ground. Notice that we're getting to these deeper spots where things that happen to an individual on these tissues have the power to give a lot of damage, a lot of trauma, or it can be the thing that made you realize what the meaning of life is. Moments in making love where you say that you're like, this is the meaning of life. Like you just like, this is it. This is what it's all about. Now it's not what it's all about, but it's what it's about, you know? So yes, sex is an important aspect for the Shukra Dhatu. But the important things to observe are the influence of how much the individual ejaculates, the functioning of what's going on health-wise in the reproductive system. You can tie in the prostate, any kind of tumor or growth. And what you'll see more, obviously, since the majority of our clients are female, Artava is what you'll work with. So Artava Dhatu is the female reproductive tissue. And this will express itself with the quality of menstruation. It has more of a regular task, not just libido and procreation, but the quality of the menstruation, the libido as well, tumor growth, anything involving like endometriosis, all the OBGYN issues are evident with Artava Dhatu. So questions, I want to go back over all the Dhatus and talk about simple ways to kind of get connected with them and ways to improve their functionality. So it's ironic because Artava Dhatu and Shukra are the most important, are the most powerful. There's really not a lot to say about them sometimes. I mean, we can talk about the anatomy of the reproductive system and anatomy, you know, but really it comes down to that sexual power, self-understanding power, self-esteem, libido, and then the functionality of things with the menstruation, all those things, strong issues with Artava Dhatu and Shukra Dhatu. Let's go back and close out with simple ways to improve rasa through Artava. So rasa, again, is juice and sap. So obviously juice and sappy type of things improve rasa. So ways to improve rasa is increased use of fruit, particularly fruit juices, particularly thick juices. So mango juice, wonderful. All the berry juices are great. For the sap part, honey and syrup. Since it's related to hydration, rasa really requires good electrolyte balance. So with this is warm lemon water with honey or syrup, the pinch of rock salt. For Rakta Dhatu, vegetable juices are great. Particularly leafy greens, dark leafy greens, because of the iron. So things that improve the health of the red blood cell. So in this regard, pranayama is important. So strong cardiovascular exercise. So if your client likes to swim or bike or walk, run, that's good. The best, obviously, in my opinion, has to go to pranayama because that's the world I work in. So vegetable juice, pranayama, cardiovascular exercise. Rasa Rakta Mamsa. So Mamsa, pretty direct. We have calisthenics, weight-bearing exercise. sit-ups, push-ups. I go to yoga. I think yoga does the job. Balancing on your hands and your legs and lifting yourself up dog, down dog, holding down dog. Anything that engages the muscles. So exercise in general, important. So it has a kind of an attitude with this, use it or lose it. So Mamsa Dhatu needs to be used. And then, of course, protein is important. So dietarily, protein, yes. Now, protein, we talked about this last time, I believe. Protein is a peptide, is an amino acid held in a peptide bond. And again, I want to clarify, I'm not a chemist, but you do, if the client is vegetarian or vegan, you want to know of ways where you can get all of the different amino acids in the body, the essential and the non-essential amino acids. And some of the essential amino acids do tend to be found only in meat. So supplements might be important. Now, it's challenging when we're studying a topic like Ayurveda, where it comes from a culture that is predominantly vegetarian. The people in India can be vegetarian, why can't I? And I think it comes down to genetics, where I just went to the Arshavidya ashram in Pennsylvania, vegetarian food only. And many generations of these people there and many generations prior to them have all been vegetarian. So their DNA kind of has a understanding of there's no meat, and the body's, for me, there was many generations of meat eaters. So of course there are certain people that will, be vegetarian and always be vegetarian. But I read a stat at one point that I think out of all the people that become vegetarian, 85% of people that become vegetarian will return to eating meat in some form. And I think this is less in vegans, because there's a little bit more of a commitment and emotional connection, but I think it's 70% of people. Now, if you are vegetarian or vegan, and be it all the way, listen to the body and search for ways to improve Mamsa Dhatu, because it does need protein. But more importantly, it needs the amino acids. And you'll see this a lot with black beans. Black beans have all these benefits, but it won't have the particular amino acids that you'll need to nourish certain aspects of the body. Now, I'm never one to sway a person to be a vegetarian or not a vegetarian. So the choice is totally up to you to make intelligent, accurate things, because there is a moral and ethical relationship tied with this decision. But nevertheless, when we're talking about Mamsa Dhatu, know that protein has an enormous influence on the health of the muscle tissue, which provides things for the body. The next, Meta Dhatu. Meta Dhatu does very well with healthy fats, which we find in avocado. We find that in dairy products, whole milk, yogurt, ghee. Ghee is probably the best. I would underline that and circle it, put a star next to it. Rest. Get an adequate rest. Ways to combat stress. So laughing is actually, when we talked about singing for rasa, laughing is wonderful for helping Meta Dhatu. Resting, and then when there's too much Meta Dhatu, we go back into more exercise, being mobile, walking, running, jogging, swimming, biking, everything. We go to the kapha type of things. Asti. Asti is the next, and when we think of Asti, it needs proper nutrition from zinc, magnesium, calcium, and iron. Zinc, magnesium, calcium, and iron. I would suggest doing your own private research and study. I'm not the best for this, but it is evident in bone health that those need to be incorporated. And you find the person you need to study with that will help with this type of development of what you give the individual. If you suggest a calcium supplement or a magnesium supplement, or if you know, whatever it is that you choose, but these are very important for having good, strong bone health. Now, another important thing, if your client is having early signs of osteoporosis, or if they have that in their family, you know, working with weights is very important. So having a weight, a dumbbell, doesn't have to be heavy, but just having a little bit of resistance is good. Again, yoga is just as strong, but using weights, you know, and lifting weights, wonderful for that. There's a woman that walks near my parents' neighborhood. She must be in her 80s. She, you know, wears this big funky visor hat and bathing suit, and she carries these dumbbells and just walks. She has this big old smile, and she's just walking down with big glasses and everything. You know, I'm like, what a funny little lady. You know, she's having the blast, you know, walking with her weights and everything. And, you know, and she's in her 80s and she looks like she's in her 80s. I mean, she could be older, she could be younger, but she seems to be getting around just fine, if you ask me. Asti and then Majja. Majja does very well with Abhyanga, which is oil massage. So a sign that Majja is out of control is stressed and fried and electrified and just kind of wired and overwhelmed. And what happens with Majja, how it relaxes and calms, is just a simple warm oil massage. So massaging head to toe, all the different parts of the body, calming the body, rubbing the bottoms of the feet with oil, but just becoming relaxed with using the oil. Now, meditation tends to be a great way of calming the system, calming Majja Dhatu, and using things like milk. Again, coming back to ghee, white rice. Those things have a strong effect. So the last one is Artava and Shukra Dhatu. And with that, it's going to be coming back to ghee, coming back to lentils, actually, and working with understanding the nature of the sex energy. Not, again, coming to that, not exploiting, not suppressing, not too much, not too little. So I think we're here at the end. This is wrapping up just right in the nick of time. But any questions out there? Anything that needs to be addressed that wasn't covered?
No, it's great. Thank you.
Lovely, lovely. I believe this is the last one. So it was great connecting with everyone, and it was great being a part of your program, and I really enjoyed spending time with you guys. It was definitely a special 5 or 6 classes, however it was. So keeping me in mind for next time. I enjoyed it, and anything I can do to help, let me know. I'll be here. And so well wishes, and I'll see you guys on Facebook or on email. Just stay in touch, and best of luck with everything. All right.
Thank you.
Y'all take care.
Have a great day.
All right, will do.